Okay, here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna forget everything you know about Helen.
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of Pluribus Season 1, Episode 3, entitled Grenade. I'm David Chen here with Patrick Klepek. We will discuss our overall thoughts on this episode. We're going to review and recap and spoil it. And then we're going to get to your feedback, which you wrote into us at decodingtv@gmail.com, the very end, although I might bring up some emails along the way if it makes sense. Before we start, I do want to mention this comment that we received at youtube.com/@decodingtv. Achy Bones Boss Man writes, David Chen, the moment I realized you were covering Pluribus, I smashed subscribe. I still remember your voice from the Season 1 Game of Thrones podcast reviews. Legendary stuff. And Pluribus? Absolutely phenomenal for so many reasons. Can't wait to hear your take each week. And it looks like you've got a great co-pilot on this one too. End quote. Thanks, Achy Bones Boss Man. Really appreciate that note. And it sounds like somebody who has once previously listened to one of my podcasts and then drifted away and then returned to listen to or watch our coverage of Pluribus. Welcome back. I do want to say, Patrick Klepek and I have been doing this show for a couple of years together now over at Decoding TV, and we cover shows every week. New shows that are coming out, we recap them, we review them. So be sure to subscribe to this channel on YouTube at youtube.com/@decodingtv or wherever you get your podcast, Decoding TV, for all of your TV goodness. But thanks to Achy Bones Bossman or Baseman, I should say, for checking out.
Please, show some respect to his name.
Yes, that's so true. Okay. Episode 3 of Pluribus, Patrick Klepek, your overall thoughts on the show.
It is interesting to watch Pluribus turn into a television show. And I mean that in a complimentary way. Like the first 2 episodes, much like Carol has to digest and try and wrap her head around what is happening, there is so much work that is done, spectacularly so, I think, across episodes 1 and 2 to turn as I said in our review of the first episode, a Twilight Zone premise. Now it's got to be a TV show. What does that mean? What is the structure? Like, what are the boundaries of the storytelling? And I think Grenade goes a long way towards starting to establish a rhythm for the show that feels very much in conversation with an improvisational rhythm that Gilligan and his creatives perfected across Better Call Saul. It feels less propulsive than Breaking Bad did. This feels much more on the taking a chill pill sort of vibe that Better Call Saul often operated in. But I really enjoyed this episode. Not much happens, and yet when you start to think about the nature of the hive mind, its relationship with Carol, quite a lot happens as Pluribus continues to sort of sketch out what is this world, what is Carol's role in it, and are we supposed to root for the protagonist? I think are all open and interesting questions that the show is slowly bringing more and more into focus.
Yeah, we did receive an interesting email, and I'm sorry I don't have this exact email, the person who sent this in exactly, but after last episode, right, there is some really interesting imagery on the plane where Carol is standing in Air Force One. There's the presidential seal next to her head, and she says, "Hey, folks, we can't let this stand. We got to fix this.
It's up to us now. The future of humanity is in our hands.
We got to make sure this is right." And in many ways, Carol represents America and kind of the American way of doing things. And I think the show wants us to see that parallel. The question is the show endorsing Carol's point of view, right? Mm-hmm. Or is the show depicting it so that it can critique it? The thing is, I think in the main, Carol is probably going to be right to some degree, at least, right? Like, there's probably something bad about being part of the hive mind, right?
Or at the very least, no one was given the option. This is not a red pill, blue pill situation. We're like, hey, we got a spaceship. You want to become part of the psychic glue? Get on a spaceship, go start something new as a commune. That's different than like, all right, so 800 million people have to die because the military found out that like we're doing this whole psychic glue thing and they got a little freaked out about it.
Well, Patrick, if you saw a person drowning, wouldn't you just throw them a life preserver immediately? Like, there's no time. There's no time to really assess that.
I thought that was an incredible way of framing the hive mind's
Yes.
view of things.
People are
which we'll get
dying
into.
every day, Patrick. I don't know if you know this. People are dying every day. Like, people are getting into car accidents. They're committing crimes, killing each other, killing themselves. Like,
All the lights are on. What if we turn them
Right.
off?
Yes.
Like, come on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So anyway, I think there's a really open question of whether the show is going to support Carol's point of view or critique it. My guess is, if I had to put a guess out there, I think Vince Gilligan's a really smart guy. If I had to put a guess out there, I think it's going to be something in between. I think I
Yeah.
think that Carol is going to be right that there's something not great about, or as you've already pointed out, we already know something's not great about the aliens or hive mind or whatever you want to call it. But that also, I don't think the show is going to end up celebrating Carol's I'm going to do everything, I'm going to fix it all. Like, I just can't see it going that way. And if it does, I'm going to lose a little bit of respect for the show and Vince Gilligan. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't think that's going to happen, is my guess.
Well, Gilligan's I think is an optimist by nature. There's obviously a lot of death and violence and evil people across Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, but like, he roots for not all his characters, but like, I think like in Breaking Bad, it's Jesse Pinkman, right? Like, I think that is like, the show is rooting for Jesse Pinkman despite the fact, like, how many bad things happen to him.
Right.
I think the show will probably ultimately be rooting for Carol, just not in the way that a show, like a setup like this, might traditionally be structured, right? Where like a likable, affable main character in which this monstrous thing happens around them. Of course they should fix it. It's like, Carol's got a point, but is she the right messenger for that point? Has she personally come to accept herself in a way that she can answer that for everybody else? And I think that's much more likely to be, like you said, the in-between, like the space in which the show explores. And I think this episode goes into great depth. It's like, the show's tagline of like the most miserable person on earth, or, something along those lines. It's a little cheeky, but like, this is like a deeply sad person, like, who has trouble experiencing happiness, which then sets up this notion of like euphoric collective happiness. But like, what is it? Like, how is it possible for Carol to obtain that without joining the psychic glue? And I expect like that sort of to be part of the ongoing dynamic of the show.
I think this is the first time that Vince Gilligan is really tackling international issues. You know what I'm saying?
That can go wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, those are brilliant shows. And they were all relatively self-contained that like didn't span country borders. Right.
I will say, please, if you're a listener, please write in if you can speak to this. I've seen this a bit mentioned as folks were talking about Pluribus. And obviously as like boring English speaking guy, like I would pick up on this, but apparently across Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, like it became sort of a joke how bad some of the accents were for like some of the Hispanic speakers, and that
the Spanish speaking, there
was a similar sort of response to some of the accents that were deployed so far in Pluribus. If you've noticed that, please write in. But I've seen some analysis of that where like, well-meaning Vince, but also like, my man, like your desire for authenticity here is a little bit off.
Yeah. So it is his first time like really tackling that. Maybe he did some of that in the X-Files a little bit, but like really, I think there's geopolitical implications to the stuff that's in the show in a way that he hasn't really tackled, at least not that I've really seen that much before.
Yeah.
And so I don't really know how Vince Gilligan views America and the world, I guess, from his other work, right? I mean, I understand that there's a strain of masculinity that he really effectively critiques. That's probably distinctly American, in some of these other shows. So like, I get that. But I mean, I'm just restating the question in a different way, which is, what is the show's opinion on what Carol's behavior is? And I'm eager to see how it's going to how the scope of the show is going to expand in the days to come.
Did you like the episode as well? Where did you land?
Yeah, so in terms of the episode itself, I thought it was fine. I think there is let me tell you from two sides of it, two sides of the coin. On the one hand, the show brings up so many interesting ideas. And there's so many ways you could read the metaphor of what is like read metaphor into what's going on. Like I've seen some people bring it up. Like, okay, I'm just gonna throw a couple out there. All right, so uh, you could read Carol as a kind of COVID, uh, like somebody who's really takes COVID extremely seriously, and like everyone around her doesn't. And it's like
Mhm.
this show depicts what it feels like when everyone's like, "Hey, life is great," and then you're like, "But actually, COVID's still a thing." You know,
Right.
that's one way you could read the show. Another thing you could interpret the show as, honestly, like a metaphor for depression, right? And like when you have mental illness or something else, and like all the resources of everyone else is like converging on this one person to like make them feel better, but it's like not necessarily efficacious. It feels like no matter what resources are thrown at it, doesn't matter. You know, like there's so many like different metaphors you could read. It's a very rich text, and I really appreciate that about the show, and that continues with this episode.
The one thing I'll say that I'm still not necessarily not convinced on. I'm willing to give Gilligan obviously like enormous rope on this. Is this show is greenlit for 2 seasons, and I haven't seen any talk from Gilligan like how much he's thought in the like does he if kind of like with Alien Earth, like is this something that like, hey, if I had a chance, like I sort of have 5 seasons, like I don't know what the arc of this is. It is still unclear to me 3 episodes in how this world supports like 3 or 4 seasons of a television show.
Yeah,
I easily see 1 season. I trust you could get 2,
right.
but there's just not enough character. There's you know what I mean? Like there's just not enough for I don't know. That's what makes me so interested to see where it
Right,
goes and if
right.
things are maybe the shape of this world is fundamentally different, in
Right.
maybe,
Yeah.
Carol screams at the hive mind or like shakes loose, 15 characters and suddenly, I don't know, but it's just, again, I trust Gilligan completely, but 3 of us is in, it's just hard for me to imagine like what's happening in episode 46 of this show. Like,
Right,
dude,
right.
I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
no
Totally,
idea.
totally. So let me finish the point I was making, which is like
Sure.
one of the great things about the episode is like it brings up all these ideas and these metaphors of like what could Carol's situation be reminiscent of, and I really like that about the show. Also, the show continues to revel in really spectacular visuals, people coordinating, driving into a parking lot in ways that they would never otherwise be able to do, or it would be hard for them to do.
They're just showing off now, Pluribus.
And people like having a woman in a TGI Fridays outfit fly a plane, or having somebody who's in a DHL outfit be a doctor, right? Like there is a lot of mileage you can get from that, and the show is getting that mileage, and it's very enjoyable. It's like, oh yeah, like in this feature, it doesn't matter what outfits they are, it doesn't matter what they look like they all have the same knowledge. So so I love all that. At the same time, it feels like Carol's a little bit slow. I'm just gonna put that out there. Like, it feels like she is slow at coming to conclusions that we, the audience, have already figured out. And we did get an email along these lines. Aaron Levinson wrote into decodingtv@gmail.com, writing, dramatic irony usually is deployed when the audience knows the character is heading towards danger. Here it was inverted. I knew Carol wasn't in danger, but she behaved as though she was. He's talking about last week's episode, right? That led to the opposite of suspense. And then the final scene, after an hour of buildup, the big hook is Carol speaking to the hive mind representative and essentially learning the same information the audience already got from the show's opening moments. For me, it felt like a whimper rather than the kind of killer pilot ending beat that compels you into the rest of the season. Personally, I think it's too soon to call this a historic pilot, end quote. He also says very aptly, coming up with a cool high concept premise is often the easy part. Plenty of shows have interesting premises. Flash forward, V, falling skies, under the dome, but very few are remembered. That is because the hard part is exploring these concepts, paying them off, and crucially, ending them. So for me, the jury is still very much out, end quote. So I think those are great points. And yeah,
under the dome, really? I'm
but yeah, I think Aaron writing into decodingtv@gmail.com brings up some great points, which is like Carol is often behind the audience in the first couple episodes, where like she's trying to like get help from the doctors. We know it's not going to work. Like she's trying, and then she's. I will say when she gets the explanation of what happens,
Mm-hmm.
that actually does provide new information that we didn't have. So
Yeah.
like, I don't agree with that part. Like we could kind of intuit kind of the rough outlines, but like we
Mhm.
got a bunch of actual new information. But here, even Carol herself has already received multiple demonstrations of the awesome power and might of the hive mind. And yet she still doesn't seem to believe it until the very end of the episode. So I guess to me, this episode didn't really accomplish that much new beyond what the first two episodes had already accomplished. You know what I'm saying? We get a little cool backstory for Carol, but the episode seemed to exist to prove to Carol, hey, by the way, Carol, this is enormous power you wield. And I feel like we kind of already knew that. You know what I'm saying? Like we, the audience, certainly already knew that. So I'm a little bit mixed on the episode, but despite that, amazing visuals, like cool ideas. Um, an episode of this show so far can only be so bad. Like it's not like it's a bad episode. It's just like I felt like we already kind of knew all that stuff. So anyway, let's talk about what actually happens in the episode. We begin the episode about 2,600 days before the invasion day. Patrick, do you have a thing you're calling it in your head? I don't think there's like an official name for it. Like maybe Gilligan is referring to it as something, but like
the joining is sort of like
the joining, the joining emergence day, to borrow Gears of War.
Alan Sebel on his newest newsletter, the creatives had. I'll pull it up. Let me find it. But he knows some Gilligan, etc. Like how they're referring to these. To the people like from the creative side. Let me find that.
Yeah. So anyway, in the cold open, Carol and Helen go to a Norwegian ice hotel. Carol seems to hate the fact that they are paying to sleep on a bed of ice.
We just flew 16 hours to get frozen like Walt Disney. Walt Disney wasn't frozen?
Meanwhile, Helen is enamored of the whole experience, including the ability to see the Northern Lights. We, by the way, learn in this scene that Carol has frozen her eggs, which I think is undoubtedly going to come back in some way. That Carol at some point had a desire to have children, and probably the hive mind is going to figure out a way to use that against her. Anyway, Helen tells Carol that she likes being miserable. Later on in the episode, Zosia invokes this memory as a place where Carol feels happy, and Carol seems to agree with her. And there is this dynamic, Patrick, I don't know if you experienced it yourself or have experienced this, where this person's partner drags this person to these experiences that outwardly they hate and are like, why are we doing this? But then at the end of the day, it's like, okay, it's kind of cool that we got to do this, right?
Yeah,
I don't know if you've ever experienced that before.
I haven't had something quite as acute as what occurs here. I think it sounds I think it would not take any convincing to myself or my wife to go hang out in an expensive ice cabin.
But that's good.
But I mean, look, the very nature of many relations is the part of the reason you're with a partner is they get you to do things or act a certain way that's different than your sort of like base nature. And like, that's some of the fun. Same with like having kids. Like I do all sorts of things that I don't know that necessarily like, this is what I wanted to do on a Saturday, but then I do it and it's like, oh, like that was cool. Like, I'm glad we did something different because of everyone's different interests. And, but it's taken it to such an extreme here because I think what the show understands, and I suspect we'll get a number of these flashbacks, that Carol and Helen don't make a ton of sense on the surface with one another. Like, what is it that Helen sees in Carol? It's easy to see what Carol gets out of the Helen relationship. It's like, I'm a sad sack of shit, and this person loves me, and you can tell that she appreciates, despite her outward misery, like being taken out of her natural rhythms, going and doing different things. And the only reason that happens is because Helen gets her there, and she may not outwardly express gratitude in the way that quote you should, but I think Helen knows that Carol appreciates, like, absolutely, she communicates that in her own way. And I think part of what the ongoing, I expect a lot of this first season to be about unpacking the Helen Carol relationship, is getting a better sense of what made the two of them work, and I think we'll end up filling in. Like, Carol as a protagonist is like hard to root for because she's so icy and distant and easy to just be upset at because of the way she handles things. And as we unpack who she is, why she is that way, what she has lost, because like if she's a complete person who can put on this face for the rest of the world because Helen existed. What does someone like that do? Like Helen was medicine to Carol, right? Like Helen might be, or Carol might have been, maybe still is working through depression, like other forms of like just struggling to be happy and feel content. But it was clear, like, aside from maybe like therapy and like proper medical diagnosis, like Helen was like so good for her. And like, what does it mean to be in a world without her? One thing I did point out, so this is from Alan Sepinwall's newsletter. He writes, last week I referred to the members of the hive mind as the joined, which Gilligan does sometimes use. But for the most part, the creative team calls them the others and refers to the handful of immune people like Carol as the old schoolers.
Wow.
So, which
I don't know. I think the old school is pretty terrible. Like I don't want to use
that makes sense as like a writing staff to like refer. I don't think you or I are necessarily going to adopt that, but the others makes a certain amount of sense. I like the joined. Like the joined,
the joined is
the
good.
event.
The joined is good.
Really works for me.
The joined and the event. Let's do that from now on. Well, Patrick, I'm not going to say that my relationship mirrors Helen and Carol's 1-to-1 or anything like that. But I'll just say I recognize some elements of it, and perhaps the fact that I'm in
Who wanted to go to the eclipse, David? Who wanted to go to the eclipse?
The fact that I'm in Portugal at the moment may be evidence of such an influence on my life. Anyway, a couple of notes on this opening scene too. I looked this up. How much does it actually cost to stay in an ice hotel? They're actually, this actually exists in real life. This is not a thing that the show made up.
I've seen a friend do it, but I've seen like articles written, about it.
The Sortis Niva Hotel in Alta, Norway is one of the best known ice hotels and like one with the best reputation.
$10,000. I'm going to say $10,000.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how much do you think it costs? Now, I will say that here
it seems like
details.
A package. I doubt you're just like staying one night. This is probably.
No, yeah, you're staying like 1 or 2 nights. Now here is some caveats that come with staying. So first of all, they're booked through January, so you cannot, as we're recording,
show up.
They're booked like 2 months out.
All right.
I'm reading here from the website. Room access and privacy. The rooms at the Ice Hotel are available for guests from 8 p.m. to 10 a.m. So like, you can't even go there during the day. The rooms are primarily intended for overnight stays.
Mm-hmm.
The rooms are not private before this time, and are therefore meant for sleeping at night.
Oh, so it's like you can tour it ahead of time?
Like you should assume they're open to the public until that time.
I see.
Please note that our themed suites at the Ice Hotel do not have doors that can be locked. This is part of our unique design. We recommend storing valuables securely in the main building where we have lockers available. And it is not possible to bring luggage into the Ice Hotel, as the rooms are specifically designed for overnight stays and are not suitable for storing luggage due to the temperature.
We offer luggage storage in the
main building.
In the episode?
I don't recall. I think they did, but yeah, anyway. Point being, I'm not saying this is the same Ice Hotel. It may or may not be, but like this is an example of what it'd be like to stay at an Ice Hotel. Any guesses of how much it cost?
I was gonna guess, well, 10,000. If it's on a per night basis, 10,000 is probably too much. But I'm gonna guess like $1,500 a night.
I looked it up. Like I looked up some dates in January. 6,000 Norwegian krone, which equals 517 euros, which is about $500 or so.
Oh, shit.
So
I'd do that. Not sure my kids would. It might be me by myself in an ice cave while my family stays in a Holiday Inn down the street.
I also wanted to mention, have you heard of the book The Courage to be Disliked? Which is an excellent book. It covers this thing called Adlerian philosophy. And one of the cornerstones of Adlerian philosophy is essentially that when people are sad or they feel they experience negative emotions, a part of the reason for that is because they derive some kind of function from doing so. Like on some deep level, they want to feel that way. Like, oh, I'm a loser. Like, I don't have any friends. Like, I shouldn't try at life. Like, and people who experience those things think to themselves, I wish I didn't feel like a loser anymore. I wish I didn't feel like I didn't have friends anymore, right? Like people experience that, but at a core level, they want to experience that because like they get something out of that, right? And I think that that's something that Carol is going through in the show. Like she is a negative Nelly on the show,
Hmm.
but on some level she's getting something out of it.
Hmm.
It's comforting, right? It fulfills a familiar dynamic between her and Helen, like whatever it is. Anyway, I'm not saying Adlerian philosophy is the be all end all, but it's just one lens through which to look at the show. So anyway, okay, we cut to 3 days, 3 hours, and 11 minutes after the joining, which is shortly after the events of last episode. It's clear that Carol has gone in front of the jet and said, hey, she actually wants Zosia to stick with her. Then Carol starts talking to Zosia about other people who can't speak English who are also unimpaired, the other old schoolers. Most of them aren't people that Carol thinks it would be productive to speak to. Like she's looking for scientists and biologists and doctors. And none of them are that. And it's a really amazing list of people. Just like if you chose random people around the world, you would get a list like what Zosia produces, which is pretty wonderful. But there is one guy from Paraguay, Manusos Oviedo, who manages a self-storage facility. And so far, he hasn't really communicated. Carol tries to reach out to him speaking Spanish. It goes poorly. The translation, so far as I can tell, is he says to her, stop fucking with me. Leave me alone, bitches. And bitches is open to interpretation what that
Mhm.
means. And then she says in response to him, fuck your mother, motherfucker, I think, is kind of one interpretation based on my use of Google Translate and Googling the phrases that were said. So that is what the phone exchange happens. So then Carol gets home, gets a bunch of mail, and receives a Theragun from Helen before the joining. And Helen ordered it for Carol to help her relax, but doesn't take it well when Carol doesn't take it well when Zosia reveals this fact. And she then tells the hive mind to never think of Helen again, to never mention Helen again, because she wants those memories. I feel like that's a pretty relatable thing, like if you lost someone, right, then you
Mhm.
want the hive mind to not reference anything that character knew. Any thoughts, Patrick Klepek?
Yeah, that was easily like some of the most relatable beats of this episode, especially contrasted with some of the backstory flashback stuff. Is when she makes the decision in the second episode to bury the body of Helen. Like, I think how one chooses. I mean, again, I understand why so many people are applying the comparison to AI in the show, like, and it is helped by Gilligan being one of the few creatives who's out there just being like, I think that shit is garbage, like, and making no apologies about it. But I don't.
Because Zosia's and the Hive's speaking style is very similar to AI, right? Like,
Well, and then if you
very
think of the,
Paul is very like wanting to please you all the time, right? Like people have made that comparison a lot.
and also if you think of the hive mind as a large LLM, right? Like a big, large language model. Like, what is the future of art and creativity in this world? You have access to everything that's ever been made, but would you make anything new? Would anyone put on a production of
Right.
Hamlet? Like, well, you have access to every version of Hamlet. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
is there any reason for people to perform, or like, what does it mean to be creative or expressive? And
Right.
maybe those things don't apply in a society like this. But one of the things that we've often seen, there was a clip going around this week in which it's hard to tell what is AI rage bait and what is like actual, just like grotesque things coming out of Silicon Valley. The difference is often very small between those two things. But there was someone who's like, they showed a commercial where this woman is talking to an AI version of her mother
Yes.
while she is like 6 months pregnant, and she offers some advice on how to get the baby to calm down by humming to her. And then it cuts to like that grandmother talking to the baby when it's young and telling it a story, and then advising that same kid when he's like 10 and getting his first girlfriend, and then he's in college, and then he's about to have his own child, and it's like, well, your mother calmed you down by humming. And then it cuts back at the end to her holding a phone with this app where she's sort of like dancing and talking to the camera, and you're supposed to, like, if you capture 5 minutes of footage of a loved one, they can live with you for an eternity. And it's some of the sickest shit I have ever seen. I fully expect stuff like that to be be built. Whether it is
the app is called Two Way, the numeral 2 WAI for those who are just curious. I don't want to advertise them, but I just want to point out what Patrick's referring to.
right. I know it's worth because it's worth watching the video to get a sense of what they think they're promising. And you watch that, it's normal to have the grotesque reaction to it. At the same time, my dad passed, more than a decade now, closer to 15-ish years ago. And like what happens naturally over time is like you forget things. And part of that is like healthy and nice because some of the pain gets healed by sort of like the passage of time. And also, but then you also start to forget all sorts of little stories and things. You only have so many photos and videos that you can sort of meaningfully access to sort of remind you of that person. And what if you did have access to the entirety of that person? You could actually ask them sort of questions, like as a part of this hive mind. I can understand the attraction to that, but I've also fallen to the Carol camp. Like, as much as I'd like to talk to my dad again, not like that. Like, part of the process of getting older is sort of forgetting and choosing what you hold on to and like what is important to you and being nostalgic and reminiscing over those moments. So there's a lot of interesting questions the show asks about the process of grief and what we do with memories. And again, I think this is accidentally poignant for the moment of AI, but speaks to like something that will be very real going forward, which is it's like really easy for me to say right now, like, I don't want to talk to an LLM version of my dad, but like, I don't know. Like if one of my kids was going to, I could see people in a moment of horrifying tragedy wanting to hold on in the same way that the families in Pluribus, their kids don't exist anymore. They're part of the hive mind. What are they doing in the house anymore? You know what I mean? Like and so when Carol meets those people, she's revolted in the same way that she's revolted over the puppeting of Helen and her memories. And I find that to be, it's interesting because then Carol's a very abrasive character, which means that when she is being vulnerable or doing things or experiencing things that are relatable, and I think the show understands this, but it makes it hard to access that as the viewer and be as relatable as it could be if it happened to a more, quote, likable protagonist. But the show knows, I think it's doing that on purpose.
Absolutely. It's starting her at a place where she hates everyone and everything. And I don't know if it's going to stay at that tone for a while, but I do think it's starting her there so that she can change. I think that's into what? Unclear. Like, is she going to be more like that or less? I don't know, but I think
everything and for the audience to go on that journey with her, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I think you see an arc. I don't expect her to become, there's no version of
it's already happening. It's already happening because she got Zosha back.
Yeah,
she got Zosha back. So,
which sort of just happened. Like, lovely part of the show. It just happens. We don't.
Yeah, you don't need to
see what happens on the plane. She's just that she walked in front of the plane, and now she's there. And the show leaves a lot unsaid in a really good way.
We cut to 4 days, 12 hours, and 31 minutes or so. Carol is watching Golden Girls on DVD. Because there are no streaming services anymore, folks. No one's maintaining them. And this really reinforces my decision to buy all of my favorite movies and TV shows on Blu-ray. Because in the apocalypse, that's all you're going to have, folks. It's all you're going to have.
Would they bring... Well, maybe we can get into this. We can talk about this. We'll wait until the conversation she has at the end about the atom bomb. But like, there's some really interesting ideas of like, what could she ask for and make happen in this world?
Right. And I
Bring
think we'll
back
probably
Netflix.
We're almost definitely going to explore that next week, right? But we already see some of its power this week, right? She gets delivered a meal and then she asks to be left alone and goes to Sprouts to get her own food, only to find that it's completely empty. Incredible sequence. She asks if she can have Sprouts back, and the hive mind coordinates to make it happen in a matter of hours. The reason there's no Sprouts is because they consolidate the resources. It doesn't make sense to have a Sprouts that everyone needs to drive to if like everyone already knows where they're going to be and where the food should be and so on. But Carol wants to be independent. And so therefore she has this whole hive mind put together this Sprouts, which I have to say, like, I was already not on board with Carol's actions in a lot of regards, and this put me further off from Carol because you see just how much waste goes into this, and how like
Mhm.
it's like they're catering to her every whim. And so I really like this whole idea because it's obviously extremely well executed, but it also brings up all these ideas of like, hey, all this is the work that goes into making you, an American, enjoy the shopping experience, right? And also, what is independence really? Right, like we like to think we have like independent. Oh, we're like, I live off the grid, I do this, but it's like there's all this work that goes on in the background that you don't contemplate that like makes it possible for you to live your life. And so I love that those ideas are brought up in this sequence, right? But yeah, any other thoughts on the Sprouts sequence, Patrick?
It's just really, again, like I mentioned earlier, like when you were setting up the episode, it feels like Gilligan and the production team just like showing off. Like, okay,
Yeah,
clearly one of the ongoing bits, and I assume at some point this will stop being as prevalent. But just like the ability to watch a bunch of like synchronized, almost like synchronized
right,
swimmers, but doing, normally when you see synchronized actions, it's in the context of like dance or other forms of like
right,
really beautiful creativity. There's just something inherently creepy about that being applied to the mundane. And everything they're doing is what people were doing before, but not synchronized in the creepy sort of
right,
fashion of the
right.
hive mind.
It's like
And
ants. You know, I've
yeah,
once like the concept of ant poison or ant bait is pretty out there if you think about it. We
it's
had
horrifying.
I
Yes.
lived in a house with ants last year or 2 years ago, and they all like it's not just like a free for all event. So like they form this like line, right, to get the food or to do whatever, and then you place an ant bait there, like a piece of ant bait. They carry it back to their colony and then eat it and then die theoretically. But it's like there's all this like amazing coordination. They just know what to do. They just know what to do, and it's like watching humans behave in insect fashion, which is really compelling. So anyway, we cut to 4 days, 14 hours, 53 minutes in, and she's managed to cook and gotten the illusion of independence by cooking for herself at home, I guess. And all the lights go off, and we find out that they're isolating Carol's electrical circuit so that they can shut off all the lights other than hers. Carol then asks for a hand grenade sarcastically. Zosia brings it to her, and they decide. She asks her in for a drink. Carol asks how long until she's going to get assimilated, and Zosia says they can't predict, but it's probably going to be somewhere between a few weeks to a few months. Zosia likens assimilating Carol to throwing someone a life preserver. It's like, hey, why did we assimilate everyone? Why didn't we ask their permission? Because you don't, if you see people struggling, you see someone dying, you don't ask questions. You just like, hey, we're going to save you, assimilate you into the hive mind, be part of the joining. Carol then jokingly pops the pin off the grenade, and the hand grenade goes off, and Zosia is grievously injured.
Be careful with that.
Right, like you would give me a real hand grenade.
In the final sequence of the episode, we see a guy in a DHL outfit who's also a doctor, I guess, go up to Carol and explain that, hey, yes, it was a real hand grenade, and we would give you literally whatever you asked for to make you happy, including an atom bomb if she wanted. So that's kind of the episode. And there's the thing is, Patrick, right? Like, in my opinion, if I let me put it this way, if I saw the shit Carol saw, I would not be questioning if this is a real hand grenade. Like, they're airlifting bulldozers onto her fucking backyard. They're coordinating Sprouts, like, and then she's like, "Oh, this is a real hand grenade." It's like, okay, come on, dude. Like, please. At the same time, as I think she's very stupid in that, just for that one scene. There are some really cool moments, like when she pulls the pin off the grenade, and Zosia says, like, "If you'll allow me," and then like very cheerfully, "If you'll allow me," and then she like tosses the grenade out the window and like covers Carol. Like
Carol, if we may.
anytime someone's acting in a very intense way, but they have like a smiley face, or their face is different, their emotion is different than their actions are. It's like a really interesting juxtaposition, and Zosia throwing a grenade and like in a cheerful way is like really cool to see. So there's some great moments. I'm just like, come on, Carol, like please get with the program, please. Patrick, do you share my frustration, or is it just the David Chen thing as usual?
No, I mean, I do think it's I buy into, she's deeply intoxicated, right? Like she's leveraging, abusing a lot of alcohol in these past couple of days. Like, what hour count are we at? Are we 4 days in with this episode? I forget.
Yeah, 4 days and 14 hours in or so.
Right. I mean, the second episode opens on an empty bottle of booze that was most of the way full.
There is an amazing transition in this episode when she's about to drink, I think, water, and then it becomes alcohol. Like, very cool. She's clearly hitting it hard.
Right.
So.
And I don't know if the show will get into this, but Helen, there's a breathalyzer in Helen and Carol's car in order for it to turn on. And when they go to the bar in the first episode,
you don't get one of those unless you've had problems in the past. Basically.
Right. Like what are those problems? What are you know what I mean? And even despite those problems, Carol pressures Helen to have a drink, like, at the bar. So I have to imagine that is something the show will. Carol's relationship with alcohol and escapism and how she's numbing herself. I assume that's going to be something we explore with her. So, but I don't know, because of, the 1-2 punch of a global extinction event and Carol having lost Helen, and the fact that she seems basically blackout drunk. I get it. I get, like, Carol, why would you not think it was a grenade? Like, I'm willing to buy that.
I understand thinking it's a grenade and then accidentally, like, taking the pin off. Like, that makes sense. But, like, I don't understand not even believing that it could possibly be a grenade.
Right.
So
what I do find interesting about all of this and the conversation she has with the was it DHL wearing employee is, I do think we'll look back on this episode as, and again, this is the struggle the show is going to have ongoing, is it's a character drama, but with a high concept sci-fi premise in which it does have to, we never have to find out what's up with the original. Like, why did the signal come here? Why did they point at Earth? I don't actually expect the show to answer that, and it doesn't matter.
Certainly not this season. Certainly not this season.
But I expect it to take the path of the leftovers and just sort of leave things pretty ambiguous. Because it's sort of irrelevant to the facts of the matter on Earth.
Yeah.
But it does have to start filling in blanks about, like, how does this world operate? What Carol can and can't do in order to extract drama from that. And I think we'll look back on this episode as filling in a lot of, like, they can't tell if she's sarcastic, right? Like, they can mimic.
Right. That was strange, right? Because theoretically they have all the world's information. Right?
Yeah, but again, this show was not written to be. I'm using AI, chatbots, LLMs as a comparison point, less that it's directly trying to speak to this moment. But nor can a chatbot actually be sarcastic. It can mimic sarcasm, humor, happiness. Yeah, but it can't actually, like, when the hive mind says, "We want you to be happy." What this episode gets at, the sharpest so far, is they don't actually know what that means. Does it mean giving you everything you've ever wanted, which is like filling a grocery store? It's giving you an atom bomb. It's giving you a grenade. They took Helen. They took the thing that made her happy, and to them, well, we have the trove of knowledge of Helen. To them, the construct of Helen, the brain waves of Helen, that is Helen, and of course, that is not Helen to Carol. And so that both gives Carol a weapon, right? Like, you can easily start to build out things she could ask them to do that would seem to be contradictory in nature to the success of the hive mind, but would be in service of keeping Carol happy, right? Like, if she got an atom bomb and striking it against the hive mind, would they allow her to do that? Do they draw a line? They'll give her the atom bomb, but they won't let her, you know what I mean? So I think on a small stakes level of, they don't know what emotions are and can't actually understand them, to the grander scale, she could weaponize the entire world against the hive mind because they exist at her, not to make her happy, but just to follow her orders, because from their perspective, that is making her happy. In their logic,
they think following her orders will make her happy, right? That is my interpretation. Is like, they are giving her an atom bomb because they think that will make her happy,
right?
But yes, like, will they eventually realize that that's not the case, right? Like,
or can they? Can they?
Right, can
again,
they?
Like
Can they?
again,
Yeah.
to extend the chatbot analogy, a
Yeah.
chatbot can't create anything. It can only reproduce what it already knows. Can the hive mind develop new ideas, or are they limited by what they have access to? So
Yeah.
could they even develop an understanding of sarcasm by continued exposure to
Right.
Carol and other humans, or are they stuck where they're at? And I think that
Yeah.
opens up some really interesting questions about how all this works.
Yeah, I mean, I think humans that are in the hive mind know what sarcasm is, but like for some reason, their biological imperative prevents them from implementing it, right? Or like actioning on that, right? So there's something about being in the hive mind that changes what they're able to do. And learning about that, I think, will be. I agree with you. We've got to fill in more blanks about what's going on with Carol. Some people did point out that one of the interesting things about Carol is she seems to have no one, right? In last week's episode, all the other people on the plane brought people with them, their family members, whatever. And there's a lot of open questions about what does it mean if your son is part of the hive mind? Like, um, but Carol doesn't have like, where's Carol's mom, dad, brother, sister? Like, she seems to have no one other than Helen.
It doesn't even
And
think to explore the idea of, well, can I talk? I don't know if she can talk to her mom, but you know what I mean? Like,
right,
could that she doesn't even, it never even occurs to her
right,
to reach out to anyone, even if she's not close to them, even if she's ostracized from them. Like she she has a family, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
but
yeah.
for some reason she is not connected with them, which I suspect is something the show will explore going forward.
I suspect as well. I think we're also going to learn more about these other people around the world that like
I think this guy in the
are
bunker is going to be.
the bunker guy. Like,
I think he's on Carol's wavelength. Like,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
he's also
so-
going to be team. Let's take out the hive mind.
Yeah. And the thing is, Carol already has the ultimate weapon against the hive mind, which is her own negative emotions, right? Like,
Well, and so and also if you think about it, if she can't speak to the one person in this bunker that might agree with her, share her perspective, they will have to use the hive mind to communicate, right? Like to act
Right.
as
yeah,
translators. And that's where this information about what the hive mind can and cannot do, I think, allows her to start making some risk calculations
yeah,
on it.
yeah,
Just because we're sharing how we're intending to take out the hive mind, they can't stop us because they need to keep us happy. You start to imagine like where language becomes less of a concern.
yeah.
But that is lingered as one of my more interesting sort of choices by the show, is to predominantly have, if we only have 11 or 12 other characters that could exist in the show, to make half of them non-English speakers is just a fascinating creative choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyway, I agree with you. A lot of interesting ideas brought up by the episode. And so, obviously, still a big fan of the show. It just is like, okay, the idea that Carol wouldn't have cottoned on slightly more to what's happening than where she is, that's the only issue I have. Everything else is great. Let's talk about some of people's feedback. Last week, Patrick Klepek, we talked about that scene in the airplane where Carol says, hey, this is the way it's got to go, and I'm telling you what's going to happen. And we put the call out to Decoding TV listeners to tell us, hey, is this like, do you agree with what I said? David Chen said, which is like, that represents a very specific American point of view. Whereas Patrick Klepek was like, yeah, why wouldn't you do what Carol's doing? We got a lot of emails. I'll read a few of them. Gordon writes in to decodingtv@gmail.com. I am from South Africa, where we have a philosophy called Ubuntu, which is the same name as the Linux operating system. It means that the individual is not who they are due to their actions alone, but a product of the greater society. It does not imply that the individual does not exist. Instead, it means it's a means of emphasizing our interconnectedness. Put simply, I am because of those around me. Side note, beautiful concept. I love that. Anyway, Gordon continues, despite this, I saw both sides of the moral quandary that the characters found themselves in. This is in part due to how I've been brought up watching Western media and being exposed to Western cultures. As well, I understood Carol's POV, as well as those of the remaining 11 who were not willing to go along with her, end quote. So that's Gordon's perspective from South Africa. We got an email from Lennart, writing into decodingtv@gmail.com saying, while I was watching the show, I thought about the American way Carol handled things and if you would address it or even perceive them as such. Good job on that, I guess. As a German, we have a similar focus on the individual and less family group focused view compared to other cultures and would land on the same side saying this situation is bad. However, the way Carol rolled in and tried to take the reins and couldn't perceive that anyone could have another opinion on the topic made me roll my eyes. It immediately gave me world police, guns blazing, the sheriff is here, this is how we do it vibes, and I dubbed her Karen in my head, as Patrick also said. Those are my quick thoughts on the topic. David, since you are next door for American standards, maybe come along and visit Cologne one day. It's a great city with pretty warm and friendly people, considering we are Germans after all. Thanks for that. And then Camille writes in, for context, I'm a Filipina, born and raised in the Philippines. I've spent most of my life here, but I also lived in France for a few years. I consider myself fairly well-traveled. I'm a polyglot. I can speak English, Filipino, French, Spanish, and a little bit of German and Chinese. Not trying to show off, simply show that I've been exposed to different cultures growing up, and I do endeavor to keep learning about other cultures to broaden my perspectives.
God damn.
Given my own experiences, I do not think it'd be fair to say this is a general Filipino perspective of the show, other than the fact that an individual Filipina is sharing her thoughts on it. Sorry for this long disclaimer. Anyway, Camille then continues and shares her thoughts on the show. She really likes the show as well. But then the key part of the email is the scene where Carol confronts the other 5 English-speaking people who are not part of the hive mind was particularly jarring. It made me feel deeply uncomfortable. And though up until that point, I pretty much agreed with Carol's reactions, seeing a white woman imposing her perspective on a group of people of color, several of whom were Asian, really left a bitter taste in my mouth. And it went beyond the unfortunate manner of her expressing her ideas. Her lack of self-awareness of her own privilege in the situation and her own position as a white person commanding people of color disgusted me. Centuries of colonial oppression from the Spanish and the Americans, in the case of the Philippines, seemed to cast a shadow on the proceedings. Carol, as you both said, had become a Karen. It was so satisfying to see her being called out by the others, end quote. So thank you so much for your vast and diverse opinions about what we that wasn't even all the emails. We got a lot more emails, but like we appreciate you writing into decodingtv@gmail.com and sharing your perspectives on the show. Please feel free to continue to do that. We'll try to make some time for feedback every week. Patrick Klepek, any reactions to the emails or thoughts on what has been discussed there?
No, it was. I really appreciated folks really rose to the occasion. It was really fun to read all those differing perspectives, and I think lines up with I think the show wants you to feel that way. I think it's just that's why it's so interesting having other people write in. Where I think you and I went through our own uniquely like, hey, like we're rooting for Carol, and then like halfway through her pitch, it's like I don't know, Carol, like. I'm not sure I signed up for this version of it. Whereas a lot of other folks, I think, came in already skeptical, you know, of her, especially when you bring in, as Camille wrote, like the explicit framing of this white woman coming in to like, I think the show is being purposeful. I think so far it's done a good job of that. You know what I mean? Like, but again, I think I hadn't thought about that part as much until you started framing it that way early in the episode. I'm like, Vince, don't fuck this up. Like, I'm not saying he's gonna. I'm just. It got me.
We're gonna find out.
I was 0 worried, and then you made me like 2 worried out of 10.
Yeah.
And we're
gonna find out Vince's ultra MAGA hawk.
I think it's less that as much as a worry over being more clumsy and well intentioned than anything else. And I remain hopeful, but I went from not worried to at least slightly worried over the course of this episode.
I just cannot imagine somebody who produced Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, like works of, in my opinion, genius.
Yes.
Agreed. You know, would come into this show, Pluribus, and have an uncritical view of Carol's perspective on how to approach this problem, as demonstrated in episodes 1 and 2. Like, it's just really hard for me to imagine that he's going to be like, yes, Carol was the good guy the whole time.
No,
I
think that's
I just can't imagine.
That's basically impossible to
me.
Too.
Maybe, but like, I just can't imagine that. So, but maybe it will be we're going to look back on this, me saying this, and be like, well, Dave, as with virtually every prediction you've ever made, you messed up again. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.